Hello, everyone. At least I assume you can see and hear me. I did manage to remember to take the mute off my mic this time. There's Quindy. Has chat changed? I can see some of the conversation you all were having with Anne this morning, so that's different. Curse 13, hello. So hopefully everyone's doing okay today. I am going to paint, which I haven't really done much of for like a very long time. Early November. I barely painted since then. Just one session testing a paint brand that I didn't love. But, ooh, Kurt's got a new desk and has it all set up. Is this a new desk for working on painting things or like your computer desk? Or I have 4 desks, so I'm super into desks, I guess. There's a bunch of cats swimming around back here. I'm alone today. My husband's gone out, so there may be cat interruptions. I fed them an hour early so that they would leave us alone, but we'll see how that works out. I think you're all familiar with the work of cats. All right, I'm gonna switch my camera to the combo view. Curse 13, it's a huge desk that supports my computer monitors and with enough space for a permanent painting and mini station. That is really great. When you can have a permanent station, that is very helpful to, just sitting down and getting something done more quickly. Quindy said, in our previous visible chat was always the case for mods, but now it is available for, and Curse 13 will love this, regular users. I don't know if any of us are regular, are we? I consider myself much more irregular. So last week, I worked on a bunch of things that aren't here. We did prep. I don't know why. I'm just going to put this guy in the scene for some reason. This is not a hint or anything. This is really me being random because I didn't bring any of the miniatures from last week over as I would normally do. So I had some metal miniatures. I had some Bones USA, which are very similar to resin miniatures. And I had a couple of Bones Black and Bones Classic miniatures. And I showed you all the tools that I like to use and the methods that I like to use to take the mold lines off and otherwise get that rat speaks opossum. And otherwise get them prepared to paint because all of them were ideas of things that I want to do on stream this year. And I'm not doing any of those today because I remembered it was Martin Luther King Day and I kind of wanted to follow up on something I did last year, which was dark skin. So this guy is actually one of the things I want to do this year as well. This is the rat that was in the original Learn to Paint, like the first Learn to Paint kit that Reaper did, I think, with the pro paints. It was this guy and then an Anurian man-at-arms and I think it was called Armor and Fur and Armor, something like that. And I finished the Anurian man-at-arms. That was like the first miniature I fully painted. And I started this guy, and then he sat for a long time. And then years later, I started him again, and then he sat for a long time. And I kind of have this, I want to finish some of those things. I'm either going to throw them out or finish them. So I thought it might be fun, since this is beyond the kit, and I started on the kit before I was writing the kits, if I work on this guy on stream. But that is not for today. I just happen to have him on my desk. What I did last year that I want to follow up on is talked about painting dark skin. So I had a couple of shows. The first one I did, I think, was on Martin Luther King Day last year, and it was painting this guy who is, he has a fairly large face in comparison to, that's a standard human. So that's Giselle. Many of you probably have Giselle. But some of the halflings and gnomes actually have bigger faces if you want to practice face painting. But in terms of the stream and the quality that you can see on video, it still looks very stark to me. Even I think it looks better in person, but it looks kind of cartoony on the video. So I grabbed a giant, and I guess we'll put his face next to hers, for an even larger canvas to talk about nuances and details of face painting. And I did a warm skin version and a cool toned version. And I thought it would be nice this year to give them some hair, which is a topic I'll go into in a little more detail. But so those are two of the ones I painted last year, and then that guy, and then I painted Giselle. I don't think I painted her. The pink dress is on stream. That was from Valentine's Day last year, I think. But I think I did her skin and hair later. So I have collected a series of paints. But actually, before I show you hair paints, I'm going to show you, these are skin paints that I put this chart together. If you want to paint darker skin, I know it's kind of a topic that sometimes people aren't sure where to start, what colors work well and stuff. So I kind of did it. It goes from darker to lighter. So, you know, you can, depending on the value of the skin tone you want to paint, you can pick a medium skin tone or a lighter one, and then like highlight this direction and shadow in this direction. Or you start here for a very dark skin tone and then highlight in this direction. And then the top are cooler colors that you would use. So that's more of the skin tone on like this lady. And then as you move towards the bottom, you'd be choosing warmer skin tones. The reason I got this out, and this is on the web page that Quindy will hopefully help me find, which I think is called Face Highlights on Darker Skin Tones, that is on my web page. So this chart is there. You don't feel like you have to take a screenshot or whatever. And then some more detail about where to put the highlights and why we need to put highlights on darker skin, and some other stuff, and picture, like nice resolution pictures of those figures that I just showed you are there. But one of the reasons I got the skin chart out again is oftentimes colors that you use for skin will work well on hair. So if you start looking at blonde hair and you do, like you put a picture in a computer program and you start doing the paint dropper thing where you can isolate the colors, you'll find that a lot of those colors are, you know, colors like this that are very much skin toned colors. You'll get a few that are kind of yellowy or goldy, but a lot of the elements you wouldn't, taken out of context, you wouldn't immediately say, oh, that's a hair color. I don't know that I specifically pulled these paints. I kind of just went over to my shelf and grabbed some paints that I thought would work well. I think warmer, in general, warmer, browner, maybe a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow is going to look more natural for natural dark hair than like some of the pinks and purples that were in the cool skin tone thing. But it's going to depend on the lighting as well as the person. And then these are browns that I pulled out of the Learn to Paint kit sets and expansions, I believe. So I keep those by my desk. Since this is beyond the kit, when I have questions or don't have a specific color scheme in mind, I like to grab some of those paints because I figure a lot of people watching have at least one of the kits. And I thought it might be interesting to just try to see what I can do with those paints on one of these figures. But some of these guys actually need to go on to hold. I don't think I'll put the giants on holders. I'll just use they're very big. They kind of come with built-in handles. I've goofed around with things. This was those dry brushes that I tested out on the show, and some other stuff. So my poor armless giants will probably get used to test yet other things. Who knows? But I also have this guy, and his shirt was painted on a previous show. I did an episode on colored metallics, like what you can use them for other than metal things that are colorful. So I did a wizard's cloak and this shirt. I'm not actually happy with the shirt, but that's one of the things I like to do here on this show is fail on screen so that you see experimentation and failure, and that these are things people you think know what they're doing go through as well. I mean, assuming anyone here actually thinks I know what I'm doing, which I don't know that any of you are that naive. So right before the show started, I painted everybody that I've just shown you hair black, like just straight up pure black. Even if I'm going to use other colors and warmer tones for the highlights, the shadows are probably going to be black, and I think it's just easiest to start black and not have to do stuff in the crevices for this particular. That is weird. I thought I checked the amount of light and that it worked, and now it doesn't. If you look at the pictures in the website that Quindy shared, I think I originally, like, I just painted the hair on these two darker so that you were looking at the skin in context. And I think I used walnut brown originally, and it was rubbing off a little because I had just done one coat, and then they've been getting bounced around my desk forever now. So I was just using one of my old blister packs, as I like to do, to give everyone some black hair to begin with. But the 70s guy hadn't had any color, and I just really quickly did a coat of ebony skin on him, because I thought if I left things white, at least around the area where I was painting, it was going to be way too distracting to figure out what was going on. So let me just get stuff out. Oh, I still haven't stuck her down. This, I believe, is one of the hench people from Bones 5, and also available in a box set. I do not know if she's available singly, but she has curly hair. I'm gonna need my palette, which I've hardly had out, as I said, in months. I had this old wrinkled up piece of paper over here in my show supplies from, I think I had done an episode where I wasn't sure whether I would have to paint or not, and then I didn't. So it was just, I just kept the thing for later. It was all wrinkled up. I will attempt to show my palette and my colors as necessary, but if you've been here before, you know that the camera does not like if I put the palette in the frame, we're going to see a lot of paint and not very much miniature. So, I'm actually kind of, Helga, known for painting hair, but as I was thinking about this topic, which granted not a lot, because my husband suggested this last night, and then I was like, oh, what a good idea. That black paint has gotten a little crunchy, so I'm going to get a little more. I was realizing that, and even, even as a self-effacing artist, I will go ahead and say, yes, I'm pretty good at painting hair. And there's a blog post about that. And both the skin painting and the hair painting blog posts link to videos where you can watch me do that. Because before Reaper did streaming, we would sometimes paint, do video painting things that they would record and then put on the YouTube channel. And the one I did was hair. So I thought after the show last week that I had mollified its focus issues, but I don't know if that is true. Anyway, so I am pretty well known for painting great hair, but I'm pretty well known for painting this kind of great hair. So straight or slightly wavy. And possibly it's because that is the hair that I've had. I don't know. But I've actually always found curly hair to be fairly tricky, and also certain hairstyles and cuts and stuff are harder for me. So this is my happy spot for painting hair. It's long, or even longer than this is fine too. And I get to paint the shapes where it flows over the shoulders and so on. So I don't know that I've painted a lot of curly hair that I'm happy with. This is an older mini. I'm not unhappy with this, but it'd be interesting to do this. This is kind of, I consider this the start of me figuring out how to better paint curly hair and other hair textures and hairstyles. Right here, those are chips. And in fact, I'm debating doing a show on trying to do repairs, because you see she's got a big chunk out of her skin too. I want to repaint this miniature, because I either want to fix it or repaint it. I think I want to do both. This was for my skin painting class, this was one that I did up so people could see an example, and I think it would be nice to restore her to, I mean, I guess you can still see the skin, but it is distracting having that thing. And there's a couple little tricks, which is mainly just that you don't just have to put primer on so the paint sticks. You have to fill the hole enough so that when you put a coat of paint over it, you can't see where the damage is. This would be an easier fix because this is a broken up surface, so it's not going to be that noticeable. I have a couple of other figures that have suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and need some TLC. So that's an example of, I mean, this is a rare hairstyle, kind of the ringlet curls. My favorite in real life, but it doesn't come up that often in miniatures. This figure, I mean, I painted her kind of my standard way. This is pretty old. I mean, there's not enough contrast on her. She's on my shelf because I like to do episodes now and then, if you haven't been here before, where I take an older miniature or something that I speed painted or whatever, and I go through it as if you were getting feedback from an instructor, or you came to the ReaperCon and entered the MSP Open and you got feedback from your judges for things you might improve. And then I do those things because I know a lot of times when it's happening to your miniature, you're not going to want to change it. I haven't changed a lot of my contest miniatures. They're kind of, I don't know, a marker of a period in time for my painting level or whatever. But it makes it much easier to kind of understand the feedback if you can see like a before and after and see in action. He sort of had like guy curly hair or like a different hairstyle. Hers I was painting as if she had straight or straightened hair. But I was thinking about this last night. So this is the classic style of sculpting of hair that I like painting this kind of hair on as well. So you've got like a few little strands and then you've got locks, but overall the surface is fairly smooth. And this is where people get tripped up painting straight hair, is we think about those lines, those incised lines that are kind of vertical and the strand texture. The physical texture of hair is a rare surface where the physical texture is different than the visual texture. So the visual response of shiny hair is to have horizontal bands. So you've got areas where it's catching the light and then it slopes away and it's shadowed, and areas where it's facing up to the light and then it slopes away and it's shadowed. So you get these horizontal bands of light and dark. But with curly hair, well, and I think this kind of works well. I'm figuring this out at the same time, and I haven't done enough research. So you're watching the figuring out of things live and in person. This essentially, instead of thinking of it as the strands and the texture, the way to paint it well is think of it like it's a shiny piece of silk or something. So it's a single surface, and you're looking at where the shapes are facing the light and away from the light, the same as you would if it was a cloak or whatever. And it scales down pretty well to the scale of this miniature because you can organize those into fairly broad and easy to see, even if you're holding it at a distance, elements. So it works well shrunk down. It's not a super nuanced idea. It's something that you can see at a distance and the viewer will immediately grasp kind of the texture that you're going for. I think part of the difficulty with curly hair like Helga has, that's more broken up, or his hair, this kind of, some parts are facing one direction, some parts are facing other directions, is it's a more complex and subtle surface that's broken up. So it still follows the same principle where the curls that are facing up would get the light and bits that are facing down would be very dark. But they're kind of all over the place, so it can look chaotic and messy and not really convey the texture as well. In my experience, this is the problem I have had at any rate. And I don't know that I have a magic solution for that. I think maybe that's just part of what that texture is supposed to look like. It'd be the same thing if you put that person at a distance. You would not be seeing all the little details of every curl. You'd be seeing the paint's just a little bit shiny. You'd be seeing something like that, just a little more, where you're getting some of those places that are lighter. But I also, when, as 3D sculpting moved along, this kind of style, and I don't, now that it's black paint, I don't know if it's easier to see. It's harder to see, I mean, where there's very deep ridges. So it's no longer like I could say this is an overall surface. I mean, I would still, if I were trying to paint like shiny style hair, put a light band there and do the dark, but it's not as convincing, or the painting style doesn't mesh with the sculpting style as much. Even Giselle's hair is a little more defined and broken up into hanks of hair. So what I was thinking is that style might work well to try to fake dreadlocks or twists or other hairstyles like that, where you've got well-defined locks of hair going out from the head. So that was what I thought I would try to do, and then just try to figure out curlier hair. And then I have kind of a natural style afro hair here too. And this is, you are going back to the shape again. I mean, this is, a big defined shape. But the light isn't going to reflect in, it's not going to reflect as brightly because the hair is still curly within the overall shape. So the light's getting broken up more, and it's a different texture. So it's going to be softer highlights and a little more of a sense of texture than I think you would get with, if somebody who had really straight hair put their hair up like in a fancy do, which they did to me once for the Canadian equivalent of prom. They backcombed my hair and, put the other parts over it. Well, actually, they went up like this. And then towards the end of the night, it was going down like this. It was hilarious. And it was funny because my hair is so straight, which I guess is why I don't understand curly hair very much, that the hairstylist actually called the other stylist in the salon over to see how it wouldn't even backcomb and tangle. Like, you had to use half a can of hairspray to get my hair to backcomb. Because my hair wants to be long and straight, and eventually I was like, okay, you know what? We'll just do it. I don't want to deal with you anymore. But I do look at all those beautiful curls that people have and get envious. So I don't know whether to start with I'll start with the afro. I am going to look at some pictures. I did not download pictures and attempt to argue with the computer and all that stuff that I sometimes do. So you can do a Google search too if you so wish. And let's find out what we get. Well, actually, we'll all get different things because Google is kind of targeted, I guess. But I would assume there'd be some overlap. So I will search natural afro as soon as I remember how to spell natural. And then you go to the images instead of bothering about general conversation. And then I need to look for somebody who has like the fairly smooth style. I wonder if I put 70s in, if I could get like a genuine 70s style person. Oh, I found a picture of the Weeknd. I kind of like his hair. And it's a subtler highlight. And honestly, I mean, this is real, like, hair commercial style, like, to get this shiny. But it's a miniature. We have to exaggerate. So it's going to be the same thing for this. I'm going to slightly exaggerate the level of highlights so that you can see it on the tiny little guy. And I think I will use colors that I have from the kits. I'll start with the kit colors and then see where we are. So I've got Ebony Flesh and Dark Highlights, which are both intended as skin colors, but I think would work great for hair. The picture I'm looking at does not have like a ton of warm colors in it. So I don't think I'll use, this is kind of yellowy. I don't want that. Kind of between these two. I think I want a little duller, so I'm gonna, this may be something else that that should be exaggerated. I guess I'll find out. So I started with black. I'm going to start with the ebony flesh, which is probably barely going to be noticeable on screen or in person. But who knows. And then the dark highlights. And then I'll probably have to mix in between those. But I do, one of the things, I think hair is a great surface to practice layering on, because when I paint this, I use the strokes that are like the direction of the hair. So you're not going for butter smooth blends and stuff. A little bit of, uneven edges and if it shows a bit here and there, kind of works with the texture rather than against it. So it makes it a nice surface to practice on, I believe. And then if you paint red hair, because like the rust colors and Saffron Sunset is like my favorite secret weapon for highlighting red hair. They're slightly transparent, and that kind of decreases the challenge factor again in another way. So both of those things together make painting like shiny straight hair a fun thing to do for practicing layering. Speaking of brushes, I only have giant, enormous priming brushes with me right now. So I need to pause and look for a brush. And since it's been so long since I painted, do I even know where these brushes are? I just threw them in this cup when I started getting ready for my in-laws, and I have not looked at them since. And when I talked about decluttering my miniatures, that has happened with miniatures. It has yet to happen with brushes, and clearly that is a problem because so many brushes that I'm not finding the correct one. I'll just make it up, and if I start having problems, you can watch me spin this thing around some more later. I don't think it'll be super precise painting, especially not for this starting person. Also, the paints were wet when I applied both the skin. I did the skin and the black together, so there's kind of a smooshing together thing that's happening on his face, I think. All right, is the camera gonna focus? Try weighing a little closer and see what happens. So I should be deciding where the light is. And I would probably want it to be hitting his face, so that's gonna kind of like be my key area of highlights, I think. Sorry, my ebony flesh was acting up a little. Chris said they use magic for hair shine. I mean, if there was, like, if you were in a world with magic, absolutely, it would be used for stuff like that. I've been kind of following some people who do historical costuming and are into dress history and stuff, and they're very fun to watch comment on movies and TV shows, especially when they feel that those things have not gotten it very correct. And then I'm kind of researching for an article about what kind of clothing colors could be made historically from the dyes that were the things that people could use for dyes, because it's actually a wider variety than I think people think it is. So I'm going to use the side of the brush. There is some sculpted texture in here, and this will help me not go into the crevices. So it's kind of side brushing. It's not really dry brushing, the paint's wet, but I'm sort of touching it. Instead of just swiping it around, I'm kind of touching it a little and then moving on to try to preserve those crevices, and then also have control over where I'm putting the color. So this is a skin tone that I'm highlighting his hair with, and I think that it looks fine. I don't think it looks unnatural or weird. I think it looks like a suitable color. So the focus of my highlights is going to be here. But then because of that, you know, the way hair works and there's lots of curls and strands going different places, I want to have a little bit elsewhere. So I'll probably go back and tone some of those down, but I just want to have a little bit elsewhere to help create the shape of his head. And along the elsewhere lines, a little bit. I want it to look like too sharp of a transition. And I guess he does have these like very extreme sideburns. So I am not the youngest person, and when I was young, I feel like this is the only Ken doll they did it with. They did a Ken doll that had like hair instead of the plastic helmet. So he had very 70s shaggy kind of a haircut, but he also had stick-on mustache and beard pieces. So it did just this guy's sideburns kind of remind me of the stick-on hairpiece, facial hair things that my Ken doll had, which did I manage to keep track of for very long? No, I did not. The Ken doll lasted a long time, but the hair accessories were lost fairly quickly. Or they lost their stickiness. I mean, I can't remember now. But that's why I'm emotionally scarred by the 70s. I mean, one of many reasons. One of many reasons that I'm emotionally scarred by the 70s. So this is like not the focus area, so I really want to go light-handed here, although I can always take it back. Like, you can do a back and forth thing. A lot of people do a back and forth thing with regular hair, even because you can add glazes to add color tones and decide that you want some parts to be a little, you know, lighter, darker, whatever. So going back and forth is a thing that people do. Now, obviously, that depends. Like, is this for your game tonight? And you have 5 seconds before you have to be playing. What game is set in the 70s? I can't think of a role-playing game that's set in the 70s off the top of my head, but I feel confident that there is one. There's a card game, and it has such a hilarious name. It's like Bell Bottom Badasses and the something something. It's like a spoof of cheesy movies, and there's all different ones. Like, there's different expansions. I think they even have a Christmas movie one, but the 70s one is Bell Bottom Badasses, and this guy would totally be at home on a card in Bell Bottom Badasses. All right, let's see if it will let me scooch up just a little closer, which is where I would like to be looking. Wow, his skin may not be distracting since I painted it, but that shirt continues to be a very 70s distracting shirt. Maybe just a little bit here and there. And, oh, I didn't get that on his sideburn. So I was kind of just roughing in the idea of where I want the highlights, and now I have to think about, do I want to go higher? Do I like how the shape is applied, which I do not completely. But let's answer the higher question first. So I'm going to zoom out and see if we still get a sense of the shape, but also still make sure that it's dark. I mean, you know, it's dark hair. It needs to be dark. Chainmail or Mazes and Monsters? I remember what Mazes and Monsters was, that movie with Tom Hanks where he went crazy and then everyone's mom was like freaking out about D&D. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Chainmail was the original release name of the little books for D&D, wasn't it? Which I have reproductions of. I don't have like the original thing. I got in with the red box. So I think I'm happy with that, and I just want to fine tune it a little. I'm kind of wrestling with the contrast question. Let's hide his pants. His very distracting, overly white outfit here. I have something gray. We'll put that here. Because I think that might be throwing me on figuring out the level of contrast. I mean, I feel like my inclination is to go just a smidge higher because we don't put in enough contrast, right? Like we're all very bad at that, so I should add just a little. But I want to keep it a duller color, so I'm just going to use this Creamy Ivory, which is not in the Link Paint kit. That was from my other box. But all right, I guess I'm not playing fair then. I should use what I have in the Link Paint kit. So I will use this Amber Gold and hope that it doesn't add too much yellow to my mix. Assuming I can get any to come out, I will use this Amber Gold. And yeah, in context, the yellow, it doesn't look that yellowy. I will show you my paint mixes, since I promised to do that now and then. So, we'll go one more zoom. This is the Ebony Flesh right here. This is Dark Highlights. There's a touch of dark highlights in here, but mostly this is Leather Brown. And then this is a mix between the Leather Brown and the dark highlights because that's a big jump. So you can do pretty big jumps in here, but that was a bigger jump than I feel comfortable with. And then I don't want these highlights to get too light. So I'm going to mix that with my previous mix. And it looks like I could have just grabbed like tan skin or something. But like I say, skin colors work for hair. And those are my colors. Let's try to get the shine off it a little. So they're not, massively dissimilar from the skin colors that I showed you on this paper at the beginning. But I'm staying away from colors like this. These are not very skin tone. I would say that one's maybe not very skin tone. You could get away with that one. I mean, hair color. But I will use a little bit of a pinky red in highlights for like a dark chestnut brown type of hair. I like to have just a little hint of pinky red in those highlights. All right, where did my guy go? So we're going to give him just a little smidge more light. Those bright disco lights. And then I'm going to refine the shape. So I'm just going to use the mixes I already have and see, if the transitions look like the way they would on kind of this is essentially a sphere. So the transitions should be pretty like smooth rolling from, the light to the mid-tone to the shadow. And this is like secondary reflective light, whatever we want to call it. Pick out a few of these little areas of more texture that are close to his face, because we like to see more things happening around faces. Then I just need to decide if I need to do anything with shadows. So often when painting very dark things, I like to ask the camera why it hates me. use blue liner in the shadows. It's cool. Cool colors recede from our eye, blue in particular. So it can actually kind of make something look darker than just plain black. And do I wish to do that with him? Let's give it a shot. Might as well have it out on the palette. I mean, there's always room for blue liner. It's the jello of paint. Clavicus has subscribed for 33 months. Holy crap. Thank you, Clavicus. And here, because of that texture, I may want to do something similar where I'm kind of doing stippling or pointillism, because it's not a super smooth surface. It's a subtly broken up surface. And if I work that into the shadows a bit, I can help further that idea. And I can come up even here to create more separation between, you know, my light area and this is just reflected light area. I can add in some of that even darker color up here, and then I would certainly do the lining around his face with the darkest color that I could get. Because our hair kind of, there's usually a shadow line between where the hair joins the face, especially if it's a hairstyle where, like with bangs or something like this, where it is literally overshadowing the face. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, for a quick paint job, I will have to, maybe I want to break up some of these areas of highlight that same way a little bit, just to help with the texture. So I'm not using the blue liner here. I'm using my darkest highlight color, which was Ebony Flesh, I think it's called, which is a fantastic color for skin. I think both of these ladies started with that one, because I did want to paint very dark skin tones, since we don't always see that done a lot. I wanted to figure out how to do it and encourage other people to figure out how to do it, I guess. All right, so I think he's good. Certainly he'd be good enough for a just get her done miniature. Chuck the Painter. Please tell me I was not the only one to say the vocal cue from Black Dynamite when I saw what you were painting. Yeah, he is very blaxploitation 70s movies kind of a character. Alas, one of the things about trying to paint natural hair, natural darker hair types, is, you know, sculpt makes a difference for hair, and there may not always be that many things that it works for, which is one reason I'm going to try to take this idea and see if I can sort of turn it into dreads or twists. Alright, so that is an afro, and now my nemesis curly hair. Do I want to change the color up a little? Yes, why would I not? Alright, what else have I got? So I'm going to go a little warmer. I mean, I might still use Ebony Flesh, but so I'm going to start with Minotaur Hide, I think. And, well, actually, let me just show you for brunette type of people. I think this triad is very useful. So walnut brown, black and brown, and intense brown. You see there's a little bit of like a reddish undertone to that, and that's where I was talking about how I like some red in highlights for like chestnut hair. So I'll use a yellowy color to, like I'll add a yellowy color to that to mix the highlights, and it'll look just a little pink here and there. Well, yes, Bob, if we want to study afros, I guess Bob Ross is an excellent person to study. So I don't know that I'll need the walnut brown because that's very dark. But I will start with the black and brown. And if anyone here is new, which is unlikely, but just in case, these are paint pokey tools. So they're pins with a handle, and I'm pretty sure these are on the Reaper store on a fairly regular basis. But if you cannot find it there, or you do not wish to order, paper clips work. Hat pins. You can just get T-pins from the craft store. But with dropper bottles, you never want to squeeze. You never just want to keep squeezing and hope that solves the problem. Because that is just going to create a whole different problem. Got my black or intense brown, but I'm going to need more of that or more of the black and brown. These colors are great for other things too, but I do like them a lot for hair. You know what? I'm not going to mix anything out that right now. But what can I go lighter with? That's not a massive jump. What else have I got? It's a little more yellow than orange, but I think it might be what we got. No, I'm going to do warmer. I think I'll try this Harvest Brown. Gray Moser. At first, I was wondering why she was painting Bob Ross. Then I wondered why did he have a gun, and finally I decided it couldn't be him because he has lighter skin. Yes, the skin was not pre-painted on that miniature, so I had done just a really quick coat, and you could see a lot of the Bones Classic through it. So now that I've got them out on the palette, I do not think that there is enough of a value difference between these two to make that one a highlight. So I'm going to add in a little something else. What am I going to add in? Blonde shadow, which should dull it down a little too. Chuck the Paint Air. I've been using my pokey tool since I got it at 2012 ReaperCon, back when they were at the factory. Yes, it used to be you kind of had to go there to get the pokey tool. And I have several because, I worry about sticking a color in them, and I'm bad at cleaning them right after I use them. So I'll just let them get gunked up. They're not too gunked up now because I think I cleaned them right before I had my unintentional painting break. But I just scrape them with a hobby knife when they get too gunky. I don't know if I'm loving that color. It is very intense. So I'm going to mix a little bit of the intense brown in. I'm going to grab some of my other colors. I just want to dull it down so it's a little less excitable. And I'm not really thinning down the darker colors, but as I start adding in colors that have white, I think we're going to have to thin those down so they don't look like way too stark. Graymaster thinks the Halloween pokey tool might still be on the web store. I cannot verify, but if it is, that's the Halloween pokey tool. 1694 if you wish to grab one of these fun guys that you can paint. I mean, you can paint the metal ones, but you would need to prime it first. I think it probably is a good idea to prime Bones USA. So after I finished the ones from last week, I did prime them up. Losing track of my brush. Now I'm losing track of my person. She rolled away. Helga rolled away. How very uncooperative of her. So this is Helga, who is one of the hench people. There are some marvelous hench people if you haven't seen them. And I personally kind of love Helga because, like, if I was a miniature, I'd look like Helga, but with boring straight hair, I guess. And much less badassery. Let's be clear. So, things that face up, the little curls that face up. But I do want to see if I can kind of find the line, like the line of light and shadow, kind of like how I do on the straight hair, because that will help organize it visually a little bit and make it easier for people to read. So I don't necessarily just want to go higgly-piggly applying these, I want to figure out, okay, this is overall kind of a round shape, so there's going to be highlight here, and there's going to be shadow there. This is overall kind of a column, so there's going to be, a cylinder. There's going to be highlight there, and then shadow there. That's what I'm trying to do. Certainly there are a fair number of figures with curly hair. If you go into the back catalog, Sandra Garrity has sculpted a lot of figures with curly hair. And then the Dark Sword miniature lines have some people with curly hair as well, because Larry Elmore has drawn a lot of art of people with pretty curly hair. And Dark Sword has a whole line of figures based on Elmore art. All right, so that's probably not too visible, so I'm going to go up to the next color, partly so you can see it. There probably should be a transition between these, but I will take the approach of I'm blocking this in, and we'll fix that later, kind of like how I did with the afro. So, and I can even kind of use the side of the brush to do that. I'm picking out the curls in the line idea. And then just look for ones that maybe didn't quite fit in and should still be highlighted. Which will, you'll get a little bit of that on straight hair. You don't want like super horizontal bands. You got to break it up a little, shift the lines up and down, break up the edges, that kind of thing. And I know this because the first time I painted shiny hair, I didn't do that enough, and it's very bandy. Very much with the bands. But that is how I learned that I needed to not do that. So when you do something and you don't like how it looks, and I know that you guys are probably so tired of me saying this all the time, but like the right answer is not to freak out about it and get upset and think that you suck because you didn't know how to do it. It's to look at it and say, okay, what about this doesn't look like the thing? Like, so after I do this, because you saw that I did not go look up references of people with curly hair this time, which I should have done, I can, at my leisure, look at this, take pictures of it so I have like closer views, and then compare it to actual curly hair and try to get an idea for what did I do that was different. Is there too much highlight? Am I wrong about the bands? Is it more organized than what I'm doing? I don't know, because I haven't done that study. But that is how you start solving the problem. So when I painted the straight-haired person, which I wish I thought and brought that figure over, sorry. I knew it didn't look right, and I had to think about why it didn't look right. And I don't want to imply that I'm always smart and do this, because sometimes I am not. I've talked recently, I think, about how I did not at all do this with non-metallic metal. I just got sad and stopped painting for a while. No, stopped painting non-metallic metal. I didn't stop painting. I stopped painting non-metallic metal, and I kind of was so upset by the figure that I didn't want to look at it anymore, so I didn't study it. I just put it away, and that was like the exact wrong thing to do. So even though these little curls are under her mace, I still want to get them a little just to build the structure. So now I'm going up to Harvest Brown, I think. Well, Harvest Brown that I messed around with a little. And I need to keep these very small. And this is, when you want to paint something small, especially if it's poking out, one thing you can do is if you lift up and then pull the brush right off. If you try and do a stroke, it's really easy to push too hard, to put the brush where you don't want it. If you do the, up and down, you may have more success getting just that little bit of a thing. I like to do it on the tips of noses. where when I'm working up to the tip and it's the slightly lighter colors, I'm dragging down the slope of the nose using the sculpt to pull the paint off my brush. But I just want that really bright, reflective light. You know, we usually have a little reflective light circle right there on our noses because they're slightly oily, and it reflects the light well. So I'm kind of trying to capture that. I do not know what is up with the focus. I swear that I tested this and it was all like, everything is groovy. Let's try closer. Maybe it wants closer? I don't know. There we go. So it does look kind of choppy and messy because I went up a little extreme in color. And I also want to make sure that I didn't, you know, lose too much darkness. If Crow's Nest is still going, I thought they gave out some different ones on their show. Yes, there is. Where's the Crow's Nest one? It's possible I have a Pokey Tool collection problem. So this is the Crow's Nest one, which I actually won one, but then I received a second one for being a guest on the show. Now, if you're a guest on the show, you get a Pokey Tool. So I think I have that's the one I won, and then the one that I got as a guest is still in the blister pack because I'm weird. I don't know. I think it's because I'm weird. So I'm just gonna try to add back a little darkness and tone down these highlights here and there. Improve the transitions, I guess, as much as anything else. I will try to do that while moving as little as possible so that the camera keeps focus. I'm very bad at moving as little as possible. Yes, that did not work much at all, did it? She's super close. Does it like that? Apparently it does. So I think I'm okay with that. Well, okay, I think I didn't get quite enough highlight here. I like to make sure that like little curls and features adjacent to the face are nice and attracting attention, because we want attention to be on the face. Seriously, this camera's making me crazy. It works when I test. Right before the show, I will like grab a figure and sit here like here I'm painting, and it looks great, and then now it doesn't. All right, so I think I do want to do the black liner thing or blue liner to add extra darkness and richness to some crevice areas to make sure that this hair is reading as dark but with some shiny highlights rather than lighter brown. And I didn't do the look at it from afar test after I finished my kind of blocking it in thing. So once I get this darker paint on, we will do that. And I don't know if I feel like I've cracked the code for curly hair. I don't know. I think it is just a surface that it doesn't work as well from a distance as the straight hair with super obvious reflections, and that's okay. There are other surfaces that are like that. I just have to adjust focal points and contrast and stuff overall on a miniature to compensate for the fact that I cannot be using the hair in exactly the same way that I would on a miniature with a different style of hair. there should, of course, be a nice line of shadow where the hair is meeting the clothes, which the afro hair was too short for that to be a factor. And that is my go at the curlier hair. And then before I do the zoom out, where did afro guy go? So just to kind of look at the difference in color of the two. So you've got a wide, you know, if you look at people, you'll see a wide range of hair colors, and so it makes sense to reflect that. Let's do that. We'll kind of wave around. All right, so I will zoom out some. And it is, I mean, it's definitely a different kind of surface than, you know, something that has more of a single structure like that. So the highlights, because they're smaller, they're not as obvious. But to keep the hair dark, I think that's what I have to do. So I might play with it a little, but I think that is kind of the approach that I would take, and just make sure that I'm using, you know, contrast on other areas. Like this would be shiny metal. That would, and so would her helmet. That would be a nice contrast with that dark, rich hair color. Gray mouser, because of the texture, the color stands out more. Oh, I was going to show the difference in the two colors on the palette. So this was the fellow with the afro, these colors here, and then those were the colors I just used on the curly hair. Which is interesting because looking at them, I feel like his hair almost looks warmer than her hair, but I guess not if you get them right up next to each other, maybe. And some of my basis for how I choose these colors, I'm painting just hair, like there's nothing else on these figures. But if I were painting a figure and I had a color scheme, I would be picking that, well, do I want this one or that one, in the context of the other colors that I've chosen to work with a color scheme to mimic a kind of light. Stuff like that would be what I was thinking about. Put some of these away. Now I'm not sure where Herb's brown goes. Another brown. I'll make sure I get them back in the right places afterward. All right, so now that I've warmed up, I guess I will face the very scary challenge of, can I make this texture look kind of like dreads and or twists. And here I must again go to Google to refresh myself. I did study dreads a little bit yesterday, and there was some interesting variations. There's I think it would happen naturally a little bit anyway, that the ends are often a very like a lighter color. I think just based on like weathering, essentially, your hair weathers. My hair isn't long enough that it's going to show anymore. I don't think. We'll try. Also, there's way more white than brown anymore. But it used to be that if I did that, you could really see the color difference between the ends and the upper parts, because the ends have been around longer. They've been experienced wear and tear, essentially. They've been shampooed more. They've been exposed to the sun more. So it's not obvious when someone's got their hair, like you're looking at it in context. But when you do that, you'll often see that, like someone with dark hair, it's going to look more brown or chestnut if they hold the old hair next to the newer hair. So I was noticing that with dreadlocks. Not that it's going to be a huge difference to her, since she's got her hair also up, as well as having the style. But then some people seem to even accentuate it by dyeing the hair or altering the hair that's on the ends to look a bit different. So I want to get someone that didn't do that as much, since I don't have the end of her hair to play with. So I don't know. Are we allowed to show Google searches, or is that like showing images? So there's like the light kind of concentrates on the top, and then it's darker in the crevices, which I would expect from anything, but it's broken up. I think the feature that makes it look more like dreads is that it's broken up instead of being like a straight line of highlight. So I kind of am going to have to do a textury thing. No, hold on. Why am I going to web pages? I'm kind of going to have to evoke a sense of a texture to accomplish the goal, I think. Let's see. I'm looking for someone who has, like, people don't always stand in light when they get their picture taken so that you can see. But yeah, this one is doing it too. But instead of where if this was like a smooth cylinder, the light would be going all the way down here, this is broken up. So I can do that with little jibby jabbies of my brush. This is not my jibby jabby brush though. Or I could try one of those dry brushing brushes. Maybe I will jibby jabby. So for jibby jabby, I want a pretty pointy brush, but also like not my very favoriteest brush, because it is a fairly mean thing to do. Although now I don't know if I went too small. This is a very small little brush. And why don't I just make life easier and use colors that I already had out, right? That seems like it would be logical. But I am going to mix a little bit of this one in there so that the first step is more obvious. Did I pick the warm skin tone person? Yes. Well, and now that I'm thinking about it, probably this initial color is just going to establish, here's the curl of highlight. And then I'll do and I'm kind of creating some additional dreadlocks, since the space between the sculpted things is quite large. I'm going to make some additional dreadlocks up in between. So these ones won't get highlighted as much because they're further in. But in the photos I looked at, that seemed to be how it worked. So now I'm going to go to the lighter color, and here I'm going to do the jibby jabby. Just a little bit there on the pretend dreadlocks. So you kind of do need the sculpt to work with you for certain things, but you can also kind of help things along or shift things with paint. I think we even need an additional pretend one right here. Do I think it's working? I don't know. I guess let me know what you think. Coming with the lighter color, I'm not going to go on to the deep set fake ones. So you see that I'm just kind of doing a section right now instead of doing all of the this value, all of the next value, which is often how I work. But I'm trying to test if this works at all. So I don't want to invest a ton of time. I want to get to a point where I can be like, oh, this is a stupid idea, or oh, this kind of works, before I keep going. And I don't know. I don't know what I think. Let's zoom out a little. I think it kind of works. I'm kind of tempted to repaint his hair and see if it works for like shorter dreads. So I will keep going with hers. Now she also has areas of braid. So this is a braid. There's a section of braids here and a section of braids here. There I have to, it's actually still sort of jibby jabby, but I have to jibby jab with the braids. So I would be picking out the top parts of each of the little braids. Braids are tough for this reason. Kind of like it's the little tiny highlights, so they can look kind of weird. Apologies. The spam people always like to call when we're doing the show. So I will proceed with another section. Maybe work on some of this pulled up area. And I've noticed that people with dreads will do stuff like that. They'll gather it up and arrange it in different really cool ways to mix it up. Or, I mean, I imagine as someone with long hair, sometimes I just put my hair up to get it out of the way. I would guess that sometimes it's a situation like that as well. I'm seeing now that this one is raised enough that I should have been looking at both sides of that ridge, not just the side I was painting from. Oh, what I didn't do over here, and I think would be helpful, is get that darker color in a few places, especially where I'm faking the strands. My jibby jabby brush is not a great lining brush. So really, I would probably go back and do this later with a different brush, but as part of the test process. I don't think the camera's going to pick it up, but my little cat, my dainty little girl cat, is over here snoring like she does. I find it super hilarious that the big chonker boy doesn't make much noise at all when he sleeps. And my dainty little ballerina Sawswood. Yesterday, I started hearing all these weird noises, and then Corbin ran in, and I realized that there was a stink bug in the room, and it was having some kind of, I don't know, dying spasms or freaking out because of the I don't know what it was doing. It was like throwing itself into walls and stuff. But Corbin got very excited, and I was worried he was going to jump on the paint desk and cause destruction, which he's actually really pretty good about not getting onto things. But if he goes into hunting mode, it's like he cannot think of anything other than the thing he's trying to catch. But luckily it would become boring before he was motivated to do that, and then he'd leave, and then it would start being crazy again. It's probably around here somewhere. All right, now, and I started at the back because if I'm gonna mess up, or I'm getting my feet, I don't want to be doing it in the most prominent area that people are going to spend the most time looking at. This is very hard for me to remember sometimes. Like when I'm painting skin, I will often start the next part that I'm doing. I'll, want to jump to the face because that's the part I get excited about painting and I really enjoy painting. But if I can remember to start on like a less obtrusive area, like a nice forearm or something, then it's a lot better to figure out that, oh, this transition is, I haven't mixed the paint right, or it's too thick, or whatever thing on an area that doesn't matter as much, and then I can try to fix that if I want. But then it is on an area that for sure people are going to be looking at. I think one mistake that I've been making is I'm being too evenly distributed. Like the little dashes shouldn't be broken up like all along the length, but there should be parts where there aren't even little dashes, and then there's like a darker part, and then the lighter part comes back. A broken line, I guess, is what we would call that, and that should help convey that effect. If I were doing this more for twists, that's going to be a whole other level of pain, because I would be having to apply these marks evenly. Like I'd have to, kind of like how the braids are. If I'm painting something that is regularly spaced, I have to make marks that are regularly spaced. Where the classic dreadlock is made by nature and chaos, so it shouldn't be too even. By chaos, I just mean it's not like a braid where you formed it to be even and the same size and the same shape, that kind of thing. Wait, did I go to this one yet? So as I go up to the lighter color, I'm going to use that in a smaller and smaller area. Which I would do if I were painting smooth highlights too, of course. I'm sorry that she doesn't have hair ends to play around with the hair weathering idea. Maybe I want to get a little bit of... So the way light works on the shiny surface like hair is there's kind of a halo around the center. So the brightest light is not, even if the light's coming straight down from above, the brightest light is not here. It's around the what we call the crown, where you would put a circlet. But I feel like there should be some light on these parts that are coming up from so the part itself is going to be very dark, but I think there needs to be a little bit of light on some of these. And I think we need another thick one right in here. Right in here. May need to break those big ones up just a little. I have not been keeping in view, have I? So that is kind of, I think I did the whole, nope, I did not do right here, did I? I did not. So I will finish the above the braid gathering section and then see. I guess it might be interesting to tackle a braid, as that is certainly part of hair. And honestly, I wouldn't say that I've painted a ton of braids. I mean, I painted this figure as a figure. It maybe is on the Reaper store. I feel like Ron used her for something. So I don't know if Quindy can confirm. Also, I guess if anyone is interested in buying this figure, I believe she is Frost Giantess. And there's no way that I would ever remember what number that is. So I'm not even going to pretend that I remember what number that is. That is not the kind of thing my brain does. Where is a good small brush? So is there a picture of one with blue hair and gray skin on there, Quindy? Frost Giant Queen. That's right. She is a queen. That is right. No, it's just the unpainted version. If I thought about it, I could have brought the painted version from the other room, but I did not. Don't know that I can actually remember where I've put a picture off the top of my head to look it up on my phone. But I did paint her in the traditional Frost Giant colors because Ron gets kind of touchy when I don't do that. And I won't if he lets me wander off unsupervised. I will just do whatever I feel like. So, I don't know. What do you think? Is it kind of... Am I kind of capturing a little bit of a dreads texture? I don't know. Let's zoom out a little. I don't know. Maybe I didn't paint enough. Maybe the fake ones need a little bit more highlighting too. Also, the ones that are a little sharper, I need to make them look more rounded by going a little bit down the sides. So that it does look more like a cylinder of hair and not a peak. But that is kind of this, you know, I wanted to not figure this all out before I got on here. Because I like to be, you know, pretty transparent about my process and how I figure stuff out. Because, yeah, it's great if I could find it. And maybe there is out there. I didn't really look, I'll admit. Maybe someone has a great tutorial on how to paint fake dreadlocks or afros or whatever already. But maybe they don't, or maybe what you find you don't like how it looks. Maybe you have a particular picture you're trying to match something to. But you can you can figure out ways to simulate various textures and materials and stuff like that. It's just you're gonna have to, look at the thing and figure out what are the visual qualities of it. Where is it lighter? Where is it darker? What kind of colors is it? And then experiment, and then look at your thing versus real life examples of that thing, and see if you did it or if you didn't. And if you didn't, you don't think it really looks like the thing, you have to look at it and figure out why it doesn't look like the thing. Did you not get the light and dark in the right place? Was there more contrast? Was there less contrast? But it's like people that are good artists don't just automatically know how to do this stuff. They sit down and they try it out and they assess whether or not it worked. Quindy found the picture on Reaper's Facebook page. So the skin and hair of the actual one are not amazing. But I don't love doing freehand as a rule, and I've often said I'm going to do freehand and then not, because I'll paint something and I'll be like, well, it turned out good. I don't want to wreck it by trying freehand and then ruining it, which is, again, not the correct approach, because I was not learning freehand by doing it that way. So when I sat down to paint this figure, I was like, all right, let's just freehand. Let's do it. Let's go nuts. I think now that I'm remembering, one of the times that I was a guest on the Crow's Nest, Michael talked to me about, the process for this miniature, and I had sent him, I sent Justin. I mean, Michael's not going to figure out how to put pictures on stream any more than I am, apparently. And work in progress pictures and things I use for inspiration. And so if you look at that Frost Giant Queen picture and you're curious about the painting of it, there is a Crow's Nest episode where I talked about that a lot. There is not actually a vlog. I did, one time when I was out walking my cat, I did dictate some notes that, it was before the show, so I was trying to remember things. I dictated some notes about the process and whatnot, but I have never sat down and turned those notes into blog words. That would be a good project. It will not be the work of a moment. I mean, and only partly because I know that the computer dictation thing added some words that were not the correct words. So I'm going to have to go through and find all of those and then put them in a better order and whatnot. I'm not an amazing extemporaneous speaker. I'm way better at the writing. So I don't know why y'all come listen to me natter every week. I mean, those of you that have been here before. If this is your first time, I'm sure you're making a mental note to not come back next week. When who knows what I will do. Maybe I will do one of the things that I said I would do. I guess you can let me know if you're eager to see me tackle a rat or a snowman. If it snows here again, I probably will be in the frame of mind for snowmen. We got just a little, barely hint o' snow the other day, which is the safe kind in the South. I mean, even then, I guess I'm almost surprised that people didn't just lose their minds or something. I didn't go to the store, though, so it's possible that it was impossible to get milk, eggs, or bread. Because that's what happens in the South. If they say it's going to snow, you got to go to the store and you got to buy milk, eggs, and bread. I have not acclimatized enough that I actually do that. Sometimes I only find out it's going to snow because I go to the store and I'm like, why are the shelves bare? And I'm like, oh, I guess it's going to snow. Maybe. I mean, half the time it doesn't even snow. And that Frost Giant Queen does, speaking of snow, have snow on her base. It is not the normal snow that I use. I like stuff called Eileen's True Snow that I got at the craft store, but I've seen it on Amazon as well. It's ALEENE''S. For like everyday snow needs, especially if it was a gaming miniature that was going to be handled. The stuff is pretty sturdy, and it's fairly easy to work with. It's like a paste, and you can just get it on a brush and kind of dab it on places or like swirl it on, and then you can use water to, brush a damp brush to move it around or smooth it down if it's a little too got too many peaks. It's kind of like frosting. If you were here for the episode where I was doing basing stuff with like sand texture and stuff, it's kind of like that, but it looks more like snow. And it photographs all right. It's very white, so it can be tricky to photograph. So when I was working on this figure, I mean the real one, the Frost Giant Queen version, where she has blue hair and stuff. The original purpose of that, apart from doing things for Ron, was I entered it at the old Crystal Brush competition at Adepticon, and part of that contest was judged by in-person judges, and part of it they took pictures and they put them online on Cool Mini or not, and people voted on them. So you needed to paint something that would look as good as possible in a photograph as well as in person, and in a photograph that was indifferently taken, since a contest has a standard setup. They can't redo their setup and their background and everything for every miniature. It would be impossible to take pictures of them all before the weekend ended. So I did not want to use my standard snow because I knew that it could be tricky to photograph. So I got, I'm not sure who's putting this out right now. I think the place where I bought it is no longer in business. But they make a snow where it's got like a clear resin, like water effects or something. Well, I don't know if it's a resin. I think it's a clear acrylic, because it's one part, it's not two part. And then you put crushed glass in it. And depending on the ratio between those two things, you can kind of create a slush effect or a deeper snow or different things. And the glass, being a little bit transparent, has that glittery effect of snow, and it's not as blinding white to photograph like as stuff like my usual snow, or probably even baking soda that I know some people is it baking soda or baking powder? It's baking soda. Baking powder would probably be a terrible plan. So it's cool, and it's actually pretty sturdy too. It's not a problem from a sturdiness point of view, but you do have to be very careful during the application process, because it's crushed glass, and if you breathe that in, that is very, very bad for your lungs. So I wore a mask and I locked the door to keep the cats out. And if you get that stuff, I recommend taking all of those precautions as well. But it's a pretty nice effect. I think I ended up mixing way more than I needed, because I think I started with the clear stuff, and then like I kept getting the ratio off for the texture that I wanted, so I'd have to add more of this and then add more of that. And you know how it is when you're like mixing a color or something and that happens. So even though it was a sizable base and I was putting it on a bunch of stuff, and it worked pretty well to just kind of, I touched a little bit to her cloak and a few other, like a few spots where it might have gotten on her while she was walking around. And the Eileen's True Snow works pretty well for that too, actually. highlights on this side just don't seem to be as, even though I think I've used the same values, they just don't seem to be showing as much when I look at it full on. So these are the braided parts. I haven't, oh no, I have. I've done the braid that goes under the head, or under the poof of hair. And now it will just be more dreads that have been gathered up into the, I mean, that'd be some kind of hair tie there. But how are we time-wise? So do I want to continue doing the dreads here? I think I do, just because I like never finish things. Really feeling like for this year I want to finish things. It will be interesting to see what this looks like in a photograph, if it works at all. Don't know. I did not put any of the blue liner into the braid, which I would in the real world, but let's see. I definitely want to have some under where that braid is holding things up, because that would be overshadowed. Don't know if I feel like it needs to go in between the individual sections of the plate. Well, P-L-A-I-T. I think that would actually be too broken up. I do want a big old bunch of blue liner down under here. This is a very shadowed area. And then where it meets her face. And then to separate these plates as well. There's another hair tie there and another one here. These are earrings, actually. So these are like flat plates of metal. They're similar to this thing on her belt. So when I painted mine, the frost giant one, I painted these and these with similar symbols on them, which are actually the single symbols on my, have you ever seen that ring that I wear sometimes that jingles? I don't put it on when I'm doing the show much because it jingles, and I figure maybe you don't want to listen to that. But I usually wear it at shows. So you may have seen it. So I use the symbols off of that. It's a Latvian engagement ring, or 7-day ring. And there are kind of like set symbols on it. There are actually 8 little things on her, so I think I faked one or duplicated one. You know, that's way too even. That's just like a big stripe. And I'll do the eraser thing. Didn't bring my eraser brush. I got that wet, so hopefully it will stay wet long enough for me to get it off. I'm going to start here in the corner. So this would have been an interesting idea to do on the actual frost giantess, I think. I didn't think of it. I'm actually not that happy with her skin or hair. I think they're too regular in color, too regular in kind of highlighting approach and stuff. very dull and static looking, which was sort of on purpose. I was trying to be like a less human, more of an inhuman skin. Like it was inhumanly perfect in a way. But I do not feel that that is obvious unless I say that's what I was doing. And the thing about miniatures is they're visual, so we ideally should be able to pick up on what the intention was just from looking. So I think I should have done more complex of a lighting scenario or something. Since I'm certainly not here telling you that I won Crystal Brush, because I most emphatically did not. I did not even actually make first cut in my category. Despite the miles and miles and miles of freehand. Because I did a fake texture on her too. I did a few. I did fake. Well, no, the fake wood grain I added later. I did fake fur. I mean, you can see that her cloak is sculpted smoothly, and I did a painted fur texture. If you looked at the one that Gwendy linked to. Which I had to test that, actually. I'd seen something that I liked that someone else had painted, but the surface that they painted was very horizontal cloth folds, like a shawl wrapped around someone's shoulders or something, the kind of folds you would get across the back. And this is like literally the complete opposite. These are very up and down vertical cloth folds. So I was like, well, I don't know if that kind of texture is going to work as well on this sculpt, because that sometimes you'll try something that you saw someone else do and it doesn't look as good, and it's like, well, okay, but did you change the colors? Are you doing it on a similar type of surface? Some of that stuff makes a difference. Again, it's not necessarily that you suck, it's that you did something a little bit different that didn't quite work, and you have to identify what that is. And you are more likely to be successful identifying that if you aren't starting off with the premise that you suck and everything is horrible. I saw this funny little cartoon along those lines, and it was... So it's like a computer and a couple of scientists, and they're like, so we've trained the AI artist so well that it's too insecure to draw anymore. It's like, well, yeah, that would kind of be how AI artist would turn into a real artist. That would be your test right there. Does it hate what it does? Then it might actually be an intelligent artist. Because that's how it works for us. This is an interesting, there's some deep pockets there, but I have to try to make sure that I do enough fake ones or find the ridges that are sculpted to fit in with the rest of what I've done. Same here, that's a pretty deep one, so I'm actually going to go on the inside and add one of the fake dreads. Locks, I guess they're locks there. I don't know. If you've been here before, you know that terminology is not my strong area. Yeah, along those lines, I think I do have to do just a little on the undersides. So we don't see, like if you're looking at her, that would be a very shadowed area. We don't see a ton of texture and detail in areas that are heavily shadowed. So I just want to do enough that it looks continuous with what else is going on. I don't want to go nuts adding a lot of detail there because we wouldn't actually see it. I mean, you're not going to see it at all unless you tip her over. But viewed at in the way the lighting is painted to appear, you would not see much detail in there. So I'm just trying to make it look like it fits with the rest of what's happening. Okay, that was way too much. That was not dibbling. That was just splotching. And this is a pretty tiny brush that I'm using for this purpose. Because I want those marks to be pretty tiny. If I did it from the side, or I was like a very dexterous person, I could possibly do it with a larger brush, but my approach has always kind of been like, if it makes my life easier to use the smaller brush, like who am I trying to prove something to? That I am not one of these painters who says, well, I can paint anything with the size 1 or whatever. It's like, well, maybe I could, but I don't want to. Oh, I think so this is, it's when you, regardless of what kind of palette you use, you do have to kind of check in on your paint throughout a session. So it's not just when you mix it, if it's the right consistency. It's like, well, how is it doing now? And this paint, I can, those brush strokes are not filling in very quickly. So this paint has evaporated to the point, especially for the top level highlights, where I need to refresh it a little bit. Where here, this paint is still very fluid because that's made more of a drop. And even though this is all drying around the edges, well, it's a little goopy. I don't think I'm going to need that color, but just on the offhand chance. And then if I were working on that palette, the ceramic palette that I showed you earlier, or if you watch Anne's show, the one that she has. So a few episodes ago, okay, before Christmas. let's say before Christmas, I think. When I was painting the legs, or the tentacles, the tentacle legs of the brain monster, I showed you all how I keep paint wet a long time tricks, which uses a ceramic palette and not this wet palette. And all of those episodes will be on Reaper's YouTube channel. And then if you go there, there are playlists for each of the shows here on the Twitch stream. So you can go look for, that Crow's Nest show where I was talking about painting the Frost Giant Queen, or you could go look for the far more entertaining Crow's Nest with other guests. Or any of these episodes that I have mentioned discussing previous topics in. I almost feel like it's interesting because I didn't add any new colors or whatever, but it looks lighter here. I think probably because there's the horizontal bands. I don't know. But it makes me feel like I need to go a little lighter just along the crown here. So I will mix some. Oh, that paint is not too dry. I'll mix some of whatever that color was I had earlier. Golden. Amber gold. I'll mix some amber gold in to make lighter highlights. And then be very judicious with applying them in small select locations. So I'm aiming for this area where if she were wearing a circlet, that's where it would be. And if I kind of glossed over the where do you put hair highlights and whatnot stuff, that there are like reference photos and examples on the web page that I mentioned. So if you just go to my site and scroll down a little, there should be a how to paint hair link. And that video and the reference images that are in the post kind of talks about the basic theory in a lot more detail than I have done here. When things protrude, you can use the finger eraser and not even the paintbrush eraser. And then, as ever, the trick, challenge, what have you, with painting any dark surface, so that's her skin, you know, a black cloak or whatever, it's like, have I gotten bright highlights but maintained enough overall dark value that the thing reads as dark? That is what makes painting dark colors so challenging. And I don't know. I don't mind her hair going a little lighter because a lot of times dreads do look a little lighter because of, weathering essentially, I think. And just add some more shadow here and there now that I've finished the messier part. Although I don't want to neaten anything up too much because part of what makes dreadlock texture look like dreadlock texture is that it's kind of messy. There's a range. Not everybody's dreads are like, stoner white guy dreads, but it's not a super regimented, neat and tidy, like the braids are a little more structured. It's not a structured design. Add some darkness to the part because that is quite a deep part. And then it would just be a question of how long do I just want to sit here fussing, and what is the point of this miniature? And since this is not going to Crystal Brush and Adepticon, not least because that no longer exists, I should probably stop fussing and finding about it, right? Well, other than this seems like it just ends too abruptly. There's broken up and then there's abrupt. So I would wander around looking for that kind of thing. But I think that I will call it here. And I guess let me know if you felt like it worked or not. or if there's, if you were here last week and you saw the things I was working on, you want me to get on that rat, snowman. What else did I have? The repainting the thing I painted in the second Learn to Paint kit. So the rat and the armor guy were from the first original Reaper Learn to Paint kit, which was fur and armor. And then the second one was skin and cloth. And I did the same thing actually. I painted one figure from that, and then I started the other one. And in that case, I don't remember why I kept, the first time I painted the rat, I didn't like how the skin part turned out. And then I don't know why I didn't continue painting him the second time. That is lost to the mists of time, how I got distracted that time. But I do know what happened with the other one. And if you were here a few episodes ago, I did a kind of, if you wanted to thin out your collection, in particular, if your shelf of shame, which to me, the shelf of shame is the half-finished things. The ideas I started and didn't finish, the figure, like that rat, that's a shelf of shame figure. I don't consider something that I prepped and I haven't painted yet. I like the term people use, shelf of opportunity. I think that's great. That's something I've prepped, but I haven't painted yet. It's not shame. I just haven't gotten there yet. But I had a significant shelf of shame at this point between, painting for 18 years or whatever it's been, and then doing stuff for this show and classes where I like kind of half do things and tests. I'm like, there's too much there. It's preying on my mind. So I went through that stuff. I also went through my unpainted miniatures. I haven't really looked at painted miniatures yet, but I do want to retire some to like a carrying case instead of my cabinet. The cabinet I have is very small, and I'd rather arrange it nicely so that the gifts I've received from other people or the miniatures that I've done that I'm proud of, you can actually see them instead of it just being a big jumble. But anyway, I did a show on kind of decluttering your stash, but I went through the figures that I had on my shelf of shame, which included this second guy from the Learn to Paint kit that I had started, and then I got distracted and I leveled up, and then I took a class and I practiced something on it, but then I got distracted and leveled up, and I just kept him around going, well, I should just like toss an hour at it and finish that guy up. But then I'd like want to go back and fix things, and so I think I'm just, he served me in his way, in his time, and he's gonna go away now. And that's my answer for some of them. And then my answer for other ones is no, I do want to finish this up and see how it turns out, or, at least get it ready for like, we could use it in a game or whatever. But hopefully you found something interesting in the discussion of how to paint hair that would fit on dark skinned characters. So we started with this Barry Sandry's movie Afro Guy. And then I painted kind of a curlier style, like a looser curl style on Helga here. And then I was working on pseudo dreadlocks, faux painted dreadlocks on this copy of the Frost Giant Queen that I had used for painting dark skin last year. So those were on stream. So you can find these somewhere on that Reaper YouTube channel. But then also photographs and discussion on my blog. So you guys never really say what you want me to do. All I know is you like me to mix it up. So you will just get whatever whims I have next week. I mean, you might get that anyway, even if you told me what you wanted. But I would get around to what you wanted. I just wouldn't promise it would be next week. But if you do think of something you'd like me to do, feel free to drop me a message here, or on my Facebook page, or at this point, I'm not even sure I should say Reaper's Forums. I do go there now and then, but I don't always remember to check my mail. I'll see it eventually. I will see it eventually there. Whereas Discord, I will not even say that I'll see it eventually. I will get back to Discord, but who knows when. So I know that Quinny's going to find us something awesome to look at in a raid. And Helga and I will wave goodbye to you and see you next week. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm going to press my button now. Oh, Monument Slow Foods. Say hi to them for me.